Good evening, everyone. The regular meeting of the Kansas City Public Schools Board of Directors, October 10th, 2018, is now called to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Ms. Manser,
Here.
Ms. Wolsey,
Here.
Ms. Lewis,
Here.
Mr. Oates,
Here.
Mr. Fierro,
Here.
Mr. Evans,
Here.
Ms. Morris,
Here.
Dr. Hartsfeld,
Here.
Ms. Robinson.
Here. Is there any objection to approve the agenda for this evening? Seeing no objection, the agenda is approved. The chair recognizes Dr. Bedell to introduce our policy monitoring workshop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the board and the community, part of what we do during these workshops is to go over board policy monitoring, and today we're going to focus on 1.1. In this presentation, you will have an opportunity to receive information on our baseline assessments with our iReady universal screener that we recently purchased. And it will be able to give us some baseline data on how we're working to support the students that reside within our schools. For this presentation, we will have Dr. Marla Shepard, our Deputy Superintendent, and I do not see, but I know Michael Reynolds is here too, who also works in our Research and Accountability division. And so we'll pass it over to you all for the presentation.
All right, good evening, board and Dr. Bedell. So tonight we're going to report on 1.1, high achieving critical thinkers. Board policy 1.1, we're looking at key performance indicators for 1.1 iReady math and reading reports. We have three key performance indicators: percent of students performing proficient or advanced in ELA, math, science, and EOCs. We know that at this time we don't have any of that state data back, so we won't be able to report on that tonight. iReady math and reading reports, we do have those, and we will go over preliminary data with you from iReady reports. And then there's the Achievement Series quarterly assessments, and that window actually closes this week. So we don't have that data yet. Right now, students are still testing in our schools. This is strategic priority 2, an aligned instructional system, aligned curriculum, assessments, instructional materials, and technology across content areas and grade levels, and then use ongoing assessment results to monitor the progress of each student and to differentiate instruction, acceleration, and enrichment. Our scorecard measure is 3B, and it's the percent of students moving up and out of tiered academic support. So the background on iReady. So when we began looking at assessing our system to make sure that we had something that was a viable system that would tell us where our students were and give us an indicator of what their needs were, we determined that the system that we formerly used was not enough. We needed something that was more robust, that would not only give us an indication of where students are, but also tell us where it is that students need to be. And so what we did was we put out an RFP, and we pulled a group of teachers together, teachers, administrators, and central office coordinators together to make a determination as to what it is that we needed. And so we did that in spring of 2018, and unanimously iReady was chosen. iReady is designed to be more than an assessment platform. The former was only an assessment platform. However, now we have an assessment platform plus an adaptive tool that will help students and guide students through those areas where they actually have achievement gaps. It is a curricular resource that can be used for instructional purposes and for testing purposes to provide percentile, because it is a norm reference percentile for students to get admission into schools such as Lincoln College Prep. Students receive individualized instructional pathways based on their diagnostic results. And so once the students take those diagnostic results, they're able to go on iReady, and iReady actually gives them an instructional pathway based on what their diagnostic gives. In addition, teachers are able to assign lessons to kids based on what it is that they feel like kids need. So if I'm working with a group of students and I feel like this group needs a little bit more, let's say in the area of cause and effect, I can actually assign cause and effect lessons to those students so that they can strengthen themselves in that area. vocabulary. I feel like it was really good because we use a lot of terms here that sometimes are unfamiliar to everyone, but we wanted to define some of the terms that we'll be using tonight. Universal screener is a screening that is conducted to identify or predict students who may be at risk for poor learning outcomes. When you look at any research on RTI, which we'll talk about in just a second, you will see that one of the foundational items has to be a universal screener so that you can see where students are baseline. Response to intervention is a multi-tier approach to the early identification and support of students with learning and behavior needs. So what it is, you've got tier one, where tier one is where kids get everything. Whatever it is, every kid gets tier one. And then when you get to tier two, you get more targeted intervention. So that means, I may still have some gaps, and so I'm getting a little bit more of something. And then by the time I get to tier three, intensive interventions and comprehensive evaluation. And that is how our RTI system works. A normal pyramid of intervention looks just like the one we see here. Majority of your students should fall in tier one. Then you have a few less that fall in tier two, and then even less than that actually fall in tier three. And this is a normal distribution. When we look at our already intervention screener, Mike Reynolds is going to come up and talk to you about what the results are in Kansas City Public Schools.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Bedell. As Dr. Shepard indicated with the last slide, what a normal distribution of students through the RTI process looks like, what you're seeing here is a sample report from our baseline diagnostic iReady screener. This is live data from one of the Kansas City Public Schools. I do believe it's important to denote that the iReady assessment is not a predictor for MAP, and it does not align to MAP achievement levels, but what it is designed to do is to analyze gaps in students' learning, provide us information to fill those gaps, and build those skill sets that will actually be assessed on the MAP test. What you're seeing here is a sample aggregate whole of a school and then broken down by grade level. So once again, this is a KCPS school. This next slide is the same information and a horizontal bar graph that shows KCPS as a whole are reading by grade level. As you can see, first grade, a lot more students in tier two, and then we slowly shift our balance as we get older. We attribute a lot of the higher grades, unequal distribution, to mobility in our school district. We know that 7th, 8th, 9th, a lot of times up to 40% of our students, we've never actually seen them before. And our internal analysis indicates that students who have stability within the Kansas City Public Schools and schools in general have much better educational outcomes than students that are considered highly mobile. We did assess about 8,500 students on the reading portion of the iReady diagnostic. What you're seeing here is the exact same data that's represented in a different format. We disaggregated our RTI levels here by super subgroup population. We did leave off free and reduced lunch because Kansas City Public Schools, because of the CEP provision, is considered 100% free and reduced. It is important to denote that the ELL population is actually consisted in this graph of students who are actively receiving services and in the first and second year of monitoring under federal guidelines after they've actually exited the actual receiving of services. Once again, this is Kansas City Public Schools, 1st through 8th grade, distribution through RTI tiers for math. We tested a couple more kids in math. We do have a highly mobile population, about 50 more kids. We don't give these assessments all in one day. They're spread out over a period of weeks. So the small difference is probably attributable to student mobility again. And we see these same patterns holding true in reading as in math. Once again, the same data represented with a different disaggregation. Once again, we have ELL, IEP, white and Black or African students and Hispanic students. And these patterns also hold true with the reading results that we've determined out of iReady. When we talk about our scorecard measures, this is our baseline year and this is our baseline assessment. So what we've put out here is our goals for one school year. So this is all expected to happen within 1 year. We want to move 5% of students from tier 2 into tier 1, 8% from tier 3 into tier 2. And so that what you have in front of you is the actual distribution of third grade reading RTI tiers at the baseline at the top, and our end of year distribution, if we achieve our goals, is displayed at the bottom of this graph or this chart. And we are applying these goals to schools, grade levels, and all subgroups. This is another sample report out of iReady. A lot of the power of iReady really comes from being able to really break down the assessment results into digestible components for the teachers to actually affect instruction. So what you see here is a reading assessment that breaks down the number of students and the particular skills that they need to become proficient. These skills, once again, are not necessarily aligned to the map, but these are skills that will be necessary to access the curriculum that will be assessed on the map. These are basic skills that our students need to be successful academically. This is the bottom page of this report. These reports are pretty long, guys. What you're seeing here is the actual, I think this is first grade. So this is just a sample of what the teachers can break down and get to the granular level. Once again, all of these reports with skill level mastery with RTI tiers are available at the school, class, grade, and the individual student level. So every student who takes this assessment in Kansas City Public Schools does have an individual prescription to fill in their learning gaps.
So district-wide interventions. So we have our curriculum instruction and professional development department doing coaching, providing coaching and support. You were able to provide us with more of that last year when you approved our budget. Our budget did include more curriculum instruction and professional development coordinators so that teachers could get more support in the area of math, science, and ELA. Network meetings. We have network meetings monthly to go over data, to look over trends that we see in various schools, and also to help us with, I guess, looking at resources. Where do we galvanize our resources to provide more support for schools? Bonteray Learning math workshops for Tier 3 schools. We did provide all of our Tier 3 schools with workshops where they were able to learn more strategies to help our students in order to grow and to fill the gaps. Tiered intervention for class size and emotional support. I'll talk about those in just a second. We did adjust class sizes this year based on the tier that schools fell in. Principal data meetings using networks to provide database support. Those network meetings where principals are actually able to meet with principals to talk about discipline, attendance, and to talk about student achievement. Deb Diller, balanced literacy training for Tier 3 schools. It's very important that our K-2 students learn how to read well. And so we provided Deb Diller balanced literacy training for those teachers so that they could provide the necessary guidance for our students so that all of them could leave second grade reading at grade level. PLC training for district with individualized coaching for identified schools from Solution Tree. That is a district-wide push. We're making sure that we are implementing professional learning communities. We know that the research shows that professional learning communities really help all students. They help all schools. And so all of our schools right now are implementing at some degree professional learning communities. We have a guaranteed viable curriculum with learning progressions and differentiated support. The difference in that is we did not have some of those learning progressions in the curriculum last year, whereas we do have those learning progressions. And then we also have a section in there with differentiated support. When you think about our ELL students, when you think about our special needs students, we actually have supports in there to help teachers to scaffold so that they can reach every student and they can bring them to the point where they need to be. NIHOUSE training, all of our reading interventionists right now are receiving or going through a process by which they'll receive national certification on reading intervention. So all of them will be nationally certified reading interventionists once they go through this process, so that they can be able to provide that intensive support for all of our students. And then when you look at classroom visits here, what we have done is we've broken down classroom visits for our curriculum instruction and PD coaching and support. You'll see that for K through 2, we've had 229 visits, 3 through 6, 359, 7 through 12, 195. But then what's more important is the services that we're able to provide. And those services are around coaching, support. We also do model teaching. We do whatever is needed to help teachers to improve and to be what they need to be in order for students to grow. Here's an example of our tiered staffing model. What you see here is schools that are tier 3 have significantly less students per class. Now, this does not hold true 100% because we have a highly mobile population. In some cases, it may be at this tier 3 level right now, but within the next couple of months, they may have 2 or 3 above that, and then within the next 2 months after that, they may have 2 less. And so since we're a highly mobile population, we've tried very hard to adhere to this model, and we can say that with about 90% accuracy, we have adhered to this model. And so what you see is our tier 3 schools at K2 get 17, and our tier 3 at 3 through 4 get 20, and our tier 3 at 5, 6 get 22, and then that number goes up until we actually reach the DESE state level. Our tiered model for secondary, what you see here with tier 1 is what every school receives. So every school receives the 5 out of 7 core classes taught per day that allows for the additional PLC and intervention for students. And then we've added an AP or pre-AP course per school. But when you get to tier 2, they all have part-time reading interventionists, and then they also have AVID. They have at least 2 sections of AVID in 9th or 7th grade. And when you get to tier 3, they've got AVID sections in addition to, they've got a full-time reading interventionist, a full-time math interventionist, and then they've received an additional assistant principal, and that allocation is to assist with the instructional needs of the teachers. We look at our tiered model for elementary. You see at the bottom is what the tier 1 tab is what all schools receive. It is what we expect all schools to do. By the time you get to tier 2, you see that we've given each of them a 0.5 reading interventionist and a 0.5 math interventionist, and all of them have at least a part-time assistant principal. Then looking at tier 3, they have a full-time reading interventionist, a full-time math interventionist, and a full-time assistant principal, which allows the principal to be more of an instructional leader and to get in classrooms and to adequately coach teachers so that we can move our students from tier 3 to tier 2 and then to tier 1. Additionally, we have a system-wide focus on instructional practices. We worked with the New Teacher Project last year to compose a walkthrough tool. That walkthrough tool has 3 areas. There's focus, there's rigor, and there's student understanding. So at the beginning, we look at what is being taught. Is what's being taught aligned to the Missouri standards? How is it being taught? Does it have the appropriate level of rigor? And then are students learning, which is very important. Are they understanding and are they demonstrating it based on their actions? And so those are the 3 areas that our walkthrough actually addresses. It is very simple, but it's a rubric-based walkthrough tool that really helps teachers to improve their craft, and principals and administrators are able to actually give them really great feedback using that rubric. Supporting our schools through our network design. We have 3 networks. And as I discussed earlier, that we were able to add some curriculum coordinators to provide more support for our teachers. When you look at our curriculum, our community learning system, you see that we have Elementary Network 1, which consist of a K through 2 ELA person, a 3 through 6 ELA person, a math person, a science person. We've got a technology person, English language learner, and SPED. All of these are instructional people who are responsible for 12 schools. The 12 schools that they're responsible for, they've tiered them, and they spend support. They dedicate their time and resources based on the needs of the school. You have Elementary Network 2, and then we have one secondary network, and these are the people who are responsible and who are in those networks and actually provide the support to our teachers. Our school level interventions, We have math interventionists and we have reading interventionists for our tiers 2 and 3 schools. We use our iReady Universal Screener and Adaptive Learning Tool, and students are to use that 45 minutes per week. Anything more than that is non-productive. We recommend that all schools use the 45 minutes per week. We have Avid implementation for all secondary schools, attendance incentives, because we know that if students are not at school, then they cannot learn. So we've actually provided attendance incentives, and we are monitoring attendance very closely. Data meetings to discuss QRI, Alpha Kids, Achievement Series, and iReady data. All of those are things that we need to triangulate to make a determination as to what a kid needs and how it is that we can help kids so that they can be successful in school. School level iReady reports, which Mr. Reynolds talked about, and then there are parent-ready iReady reports, which parents will receive when they go to their student conferences next week on October 18th. And then we have our math and reading interventionists in our tiered model. So we have 9 math interventionists. Actually, we have 10. We hired one today. We were missing one. So we have 10 math interventionists, 8 at the elementary, 2 at the secondary. And then we have 15 reading interventionists, 10 at the elementary and 5 at the secondary. And their role is to provide the intensive support, tier 3 support for our schools and for our students. And what you see here is an sample intervention caseload. And this is what you will see at all of our schools that actually have interventionists. They use the iReady data and all other data that we have in order to determine what students need to be pulled and how they support those students. And our year at a glance, when you look at our iReady assessment windows from August 13th through 31st, that was our beginning of the year testing window. And this is the data that we've discussed tonight. When you look at December the 3rd through December 20th, that's our middle of the year testing window, and we will be able to report on that data in January. Then on May 6th through May 17th is our end of the year testing window, and we'll be ready. Hopefully we'll have our state data by June, and we'll be able to look at our iReady data and our MAP data in June. Are there any questions?
Matthew? Sorry, Board Member Oates.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for the presentation. Before questions, just a real quick reminder that when we made our monitoring calendar this year, there was a focus on being sure that we were getting information on the time cycle that made better sense. And so our first presentation this time was around an introduction of it. So giving you baseline data, giving you what the goals are, and also what interventions will be in place. So just to frame everybody's thoughts over this. Let's see here. Oh, okay. So might be a question for you, Dr. Riddell, or Ms. Quinley. But so when we went through the budget process, there were some requests made, and we made some adjustments in the budget to fund what we thought we were going to need in order to do the academic work we sought to do during school year 2018-2019. After we got this first round of data and we understand what the baseline is, do we feel that those interventions are adequate to meet the goals that we had?
Based on what we're seeing right now, we do. We feel like our teachers are getting lots of support. We've got our curriculum team that's a lot larger, and they're able to spread out, and we're seeing a lot more support with our teachers, which they have reported that they are appreciating, and they're actually receptive to all of the support. And then when you look at we have our achievement series data that should be coming out. We'll be reporting on that tomorrow at our principals meeting. So we'll get an opportunity to see where we are on that in that area. But I would have to say from a foundational level, absolutely, we're seeing we've seen kids getting served, kids who would not be served before. When you think about kids that need the intensive interventions, those were kids that we had to depend on the classroom teacher to just kind of find time, depend to come on to tutoring after school or whenever we could get them. But now we're actually able to pull those kids and to provide them with the necessary things that they need in order to access their grade level.
Awesome. And then part 2, when you were talking about a tier 1 classroom versus a tier 2 classroom versus tier 3, did we have anywhere in there what makes it what's the threshold of a tier 1 classroom versus tier 2 versus tier 3?
So what we did was we had 13 indicators, and we used those 13 indicators. Some of them were MAP Some of it was attendance. There were 13 various indicators, even looking at the teacher perception. And we used all of those and we put them on a scale. And what we did was we assigned every school a number at the end. And those numbers helped us determine what would be tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. We felt like using MAP scores only was probably not the best predictor, but we wanted to use a variety of things. We wanted to look at free reduced lunch, actual numbers, and we did use that in our calculations. When we looked at ELL students, because I mean the percent of ELL and the percent of special ed students is very important when you're looking at what type of support schools need. So we used those 13 criteria, and we did give you a copy of that last year, and I can make sure that I bring that again, or we send that to you again on a Friday packet. But we used 13 criteria to determine what schools needed. And those schools that fell, at the top end ended up tier 1, tier 2, and then we had the bottom end at tier 3.
Okay, and for the board, one more thing I just thought about is that per our calendar, we'll come back and do a mid-year assessment or a mid-year review over policy 1.1 and then a end of year around policy 1.1 that we can take a look at efficacy of interventions and all that. So.
Yes, and we'll provide more detailed support for you in January, looking at what's happened from the beginning of the year assessment to the middle of the year assessment so that we can ask some critical questions and make some critical decisions.
We want to encourage the audience and those of you who are watching over the internet, you can text any questions about the presentation to 816-777-7416, 816-777-7416. Board Member Wolfsey.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. You did a fabulous job of explaining. I feel very comfortable that on the school and teacher side, you've got that where you want it, and that you now will get to the next phase, I think, in that mid-year to see if it's doing what we want it to. I know that some of my questions are all going to be around parents. I'm so excited that there is a parent component to this, and you did mention that there is a parent report. So glad to hear that parents actually should expect to see their child's report, I guess, in reading and math, most likely at their parent-teacher conference. For those that won't be there, I know in the past, under Tyler in the assessments tab, we used to have access to what would have been NWEA scores. Will that be available in Tyler going forward, would be one of my first questions.
And the answer to that one is yes.
Great. And then also recently, in our school, we were made aware of a web component to iReady. I'm not sure how Clever and iReady work together, but when we were being apprised of iReady as a board, what I did like was the ability for students to actually maybe be able to log in at home and on their own individualized plan, since it's based off of where they are and where the gaps are, that they can work towards that maybe 45 minutes of trying to get their minutes in. So actually I went on because we were told that we now have this log on, and it is very easy to use and intuitive, even from a parent's perspective. You're logging into your child's account, which is kind of interesting, but I'm really wanting to make sure that what is the plan to ensure that not just one school, but all schools and all parents are aware of this? Because I think that's where we get that one thing we've always been wanting, which is students engaging with us and their student on learning and ways they can help and understand.
Well, we've actually been discussing that with principals, and I don't have a definitive answer for you right now, but I can tell you that one of the things that we've talked to principals about is making sure that every parent, when they go to the parent conference next week, that they receive a copy of that iReady report. When you start thinking about parents and them getting kids to log on at home, we have not really pushed that because we've asked our schools to that 45 minutes, can we get that 45 minutes in? So that's very organic, and we can make sure that every kid gets that 45 minutes. Some will do it at home, some won't. However, there is a way for schools to do it where it's very organic and kids are able to do it naturally. When you talk about stations, when you talk about warm-ups, when you talk about, just at the end of the class period, whatever it is, however they choose to use it, we can get that 45 minutes in during the school week.
One follow-up is, I know we did approve as a board the budget to improve the Chromebooks. I know that iReady is done on those, and that's kind of, I've heard that it's been a little glitchy. When is the expected rollout of those so that we can really maximize the tool?
That's a great question. So the emergency justification form for the purchase was signed by Dr. Bedell yesterday, so it'll be going in the board packet this Friday. So you'll be seeing it then to go into your consent agenda. Once you approve, Dell and the CDW, the partners we're working for, they have everything staged and prepped and will be ready to start shipping to our partner that's going to be doing everything else after that. So what we're looking at is about 2 to 3 weeks to go from Dell to the partner, and about 2 to 3 weeks for that partner to actually prep the devices, put them in carts, power the carts for us. They're going to deliver those straight to the classrooms for us.
And our teachers, those 3rd through 6th grade teachers that I've shared this information with, they are extremely ecstatic. In fact, thanking the board of directors for approving for the purchase of those Chromebooks. So I just want you to know the teachers are very appreciative, and that's a good thing.
Okay, let me give you another number to text if you have questions. 816-678-7099, 678-7099. Board Member Manser?
Yes, I'm sorry. So I want to just help me reset a minute. My brain moves slower than the information you're delivering because you are good and swift. So when we look at this iReady, and what I'm understanding is that these assessments and these baseline assessments, as you have stated very clearly, does not provide a map predictor. So we would not look at this baseline and say, not ready for map.
Well, so what you have is the skills that help students to attain the standards or to access the standards. And so it's not a predictor, but those are skills that are necessary in order for a kid to be successful on MAP or any other test. And so what we're doing is we're filling gaps so that the kid will be able to access those other tests. But for the sake of this, the way we're using it, it is a universal screener that tells us diagnostically what it is that kids need and what areas that we need to go in and provide those gap fillers.
Okay. And I know that that we supported this investment. You all were very enthusiastic. Is there anything about this iReady tool that, are there areas where you think that, it sounds like that's where it's particularly strong. Are there any identified weaknesses in this tool and other colleague districts using this across the state or the country? And have we learned anything from others about the best way to really maximize this tool?
Yes, we were fortunate to go to an iReady conference in Springfield, Missouri, and it's all the iReady users that were there at that conference. And so iReady sponsored it, and they just had it in Springfield Public Schools, and it was very eye-opening. I think we learned a lot. I think we were able to see how other districts use it, and then we were also able to hear nationally some of the national trends. So they had a group there presenting on how Miami-Dade is using it, and so I thought it was a very beneficial conference, and we are collaborating with other districts around best practices, and we have not found any glitches at this point. We are very happy with the product so far, and we believe it's giving us the information that we need in order to provide help for kids at this time.
Tag on to that response. My best friend worked in public schools for quite a few years as a principal and took over a charter school outside of Nashville, actually within the Nashville boundaries. And I had asked him about it. I told him we had purchased iReady, and he said we utilized it, and it has worked wonders at our school. And it's a school that have a bunch of students that are highly at risk. And he sent this back earlier in September. He said that his school was designated as a reward school by the Department of Education. And part of what that means is that while they have not made the proficiency rates that they want to make, the amount of growth that they made allowed for them to have risen above expectations, and it's one of the schools where people are seeing that it's heading in the right direction because of the way that they were able to utilize this instrument to fill in some of the gaps and identify where some of the holes are so that students would have more success when they took the state assessment. So I was very happy to hear that, and the fact that we do have Springfield and other school districts that are also utilizing this universal screener.
Yes.
And I just have one follow-up. Thank you. That's very helpful because I know any tool, just in any kind of workplace, any kind of tool is going to have its strengths and areas of weakness. And I appreciate that we're learning from others so that we really make the most of it and use it in the way in which it's going to create the most benefit. So Mr. Reynolds mentioned that some of the, I think if I heard him correctly, some of the critical skills gaps that have been identified in some of the upper grades in the assessment may be partly contributable to high student mobility. And so I wanted to hear you say a little bit more about that. But as well, I'm wondering is computer literacy a factor? I know that probably most schools in this metro area, the students come with are computer literate, but I'm wondering if a facility with computers and technology, if computer literacy plays a role in that at all.
I really don't think computer literacy plays a role because when you think about this generation, many of them come already understanding a lot about technology. So technology is not the hindrance for them. What I do believe, though, is mobility is. When you think about a kid who's been in 10 schools over 7 years, it is an issue because by the time one school finds out what that kid needs, then that kid is moving on to another school. And by the time that school figures out what he or she needs, then they're moving on. And so what we've done is every kid that comes in our system, no matter how long they're with us, we're going to give them the universal screener. And what we'll do with that information is wherever they are, if they need an intervention group, we'll pull them into that intervention group and we'll do everything that we can for them while they're with us.
A quick comment about mobility and how it affects instruction over a period of years. One of the things that we witness in an unaligned system with so many different operators, so many different scope and sequences of curriculum, is that when students are highly mobile and have gaps, they leave our system, they go to other systems, they come back. Not all skills are taught in the exact same sequence. So when you're moving from school to school, going from curriculum to curriculum, there is a good chance that you are skipping over essential components that are actually critical to your success as a student and are also tested on the state assessments. So as far as mobility being an affect to student learning, the skipping of gaps and the social and emotional trauma that these kids potentially get from moving from place to place to place, we do believe that that has a massive effect on student learning.
And keep in mind, there's a lot of research going on with mobility and evictions and the impact of evictions on mobility from Tara, who went to Harvard and is doing a lot of work. We had an opportunity to spend time with her, and the research that she's doing is solely focused on Kansas City, but she oversees a lot of this work around the country and the impacts of mobility. And I think Jennifer Wolfsey sent me an article a couple of days ago about the impact that mobility is having in the Detroit public schools. And so warning that we have to look further into the implications that mobility is playing and then to be able to accurately tell our story on what we're doing to control for it, but ultimately how does it impact the school district, because these numbers look scary. What we presented to you, as they get older and you see more kids are in that intensive tier 3 area, that's very concerning and alarming for me.
Yeah, somebody said it up here because that's what I was thinking. Mr. Board Member Evans.
Thank you, Madam President. All of what we do is centered around raising achievement, which is good. And that's a result of having to pass a test, state assessment, which I think dilutes the overall education of a child, because when your curriculum is built around testing, then something else is lost. Now, for example, we're in the political, what do you call it, the political I don't want to say environment, but political season, so to speak. And when you talk to children that's coming out of school, when you ask them about the politics of the country, they don't even know what a senator is. They don't even know what a city council is. And when we took out civics, a lot of that was lost. And we are operating in a very pressurized system. And I'm wondering, Dr. Bedell, what do you do to test or to take the temperature of the people who actually have to do the work that that the administration expects of them? Because when I got out of teaching, I realized that I was losing my grip on it, and that was almost 20 years ago. And I could not remotely imagine what principals and teachers are going through now. So what do you do to make sure that these people are not losing their minds?
One of the things that we've done is we provide lots of support. I think anytime that you have accountability, you have to balance it with support. And when you don't balance accountability with support, then you do get burnout, you get a lot of other things. And so what we've done is we've added a variety of supports for our principals. When you think about our assistant superintendents that provide them with lots of support, when you think about our curriculum coordinators that provide them with lots of support, then we do lots of celebrations. Tomorrow when they come to the principals meetings, we'll be celebrating them for some of the things that they're doing well. We have lots of principals who are doing a lot of things well. So we celebrate them, and then this is Principal Appreciation Month, and so we do have special gifts for them. So anytime we have an opportunity to celebrate them, we use that opportunity. But in addition to that, so that there is not burnout, we do provide lots of support because accountability must be balanced with support.
About principals' ability to transfer that training that they get from you to their staff.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said, Mr. Evans.
You say that you give principals, you pat them on the back, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
What they're getting from you how do they transfer that down? Do you make sure that they transfer what they get from you down to their staff, down to their teachers?
Yes, we do. We do plenty of article reading. We talk to them about that all the time. We give them lots of support around how we take everything that's being given at this level and how we push it down. We don't train anything that we're going to train our teachers on. We first train our principals on, and anything that we want to see at the school level, we make sure that we model that at this level, and we make it very clear and we're very transparent about what our expectations are. We're giving this to you because we expect to see this very same thing in our building. And we do look at that. We look at culture and climate, and we measure culture and climate as well. And we provide principal support around those results, whatever those results are. Once we do that climate survey, if we do have challenges, then we provide principals with support around that area.
In addition, we do the same with our assistant principals. So they get that training once a month, the same thing that our principals get. But to the celebration part, one of the things we try to do is we understand that burnout is a reality in this school district, and it's a reality at a much faster pace than some of the other school districts that surround us. And so we also, Mr. Evans, we try to do things where we do team building things, like we had our intramural day where we brought a whole bunch of schools together and we were able to participate in that manner. And so we try to do things where we are celebrating, and we encourage our principals to do the same on their campuses so that our people can feel valued and feel like, despite the kind of pressure that we're constantly under, that it is about building relationships and being cohesive as a system.
Board Member Lewis. Thank you, ma'am, for your presentation. I just really have a couple of questions relative to clarification. The red, yellow, and green that we see on here is the tier in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. That's different than the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 red, yellow, and green for school buildings, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And it's different than
the red, yellow, and green that we see as far as tiered intervention. So that red, yellow, and green.
No,
this doesn't-
it would be the same for tiered interventions. We use that to provide the level of intervention that students need.
But
So-
this is only one of the 13. You said there were 13 different
Oh, so
factors
that's,
that were looked in that put schools into red, yellow, and green. Is this just one of those?
no, we did
Or-
not have iReady last year, so we could not use iReady, but we used what we had. We used state data because at that time we had data from 17. So
Okay.
we used MAP
Okay,
data,
that's-
we used attendance data.
Okay, I remember those 13. I just
yeah.
wanted to make sure I'm not confusing which red, yellow, and green, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, then leads to students prescribing the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 interventions that we talked about.
Yes, so what you have is you have schools that are tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and when
Okay.
they're tier 3, they receive more.
Okay,
And
so
then
that's what that
within
means.
the schools, you have students who are tier 2, tier 3, tier 2, and tier 1, and within the schools, those that are tier 3 receive more support. So you have it from a school level. And if I'm a school level based on those 13 indicators and I fall in tier 3, I get more support in the form of resources. Likewise, when we're at the school level and I fall in tier 3 as a student, I get more support in the form of resources. That would be the interventionist.
So a tier 1 school can have tier 3 students.
Yes.
There you go.
Absolutely.
I got it. I understand now.
Yes.
Okay, and my other question is, on this tier 1 with this, does tier 1 mean on grade level? Tier 2 means 1 or 2 grade, like what does the red, yellow, and green mean?
Yes. So what you see in green there, tier 1, those students are on grade level. Okay, they're performing on or above grade level. Those that are in the yellow are performing 1 to 2 grade levels below, and then the ones that are in the red are performing significantly or below grade level, at 2 or more below grade level.
And then my other question is on, I think I misunderstood something initially, and I think I get it now. When you set your goals on about slide something that says scorecard measure,
Yes.
the goals, that plus 5% from tier 2 does not mean only 5% of the students in tier 1, tier 2 is showing growth. That just means only 5% of them were close enough to the threshold to move over, correct?
Absolutely,
So we got-
absolutely.
so-
Because they can move within tier 2. So they can move from the beginning of tier 2 to the latter end of tier 2. So there's growth there, but they have not actually moved from tier 2 to tier 3.
So I think what
I
would
mean,
be
tier 1.
helpful for me to see, to layer onto this is just the anticipated growth for students, period.
Okay.
That we expect from this.
Sure, and that's a scale
yeah.
score. Mhm.
Okay, and then my other question is, on the next slide, probably the one that talks about KCPS tiered staffing model, the numbers in their actual maximum classroom sizes, is that what that number is?
Yes.
Okay, is there a way to get that information for the rest of the grades, 7 through, do we not have that for 7 through 12?
So we do actually have a model for grades 7 through 12, and I can make sure that I update you if you want it should be on here, but I'll make sure that I update in the Friday packet. We do have a model for grades 7 through 12, though.
And can we also get that, I know we get reports, I think it's our weekly update normally has that information on one of those graphs. Can we make sure that it's always in that one?
Sure.
And is there a way, I don't know if there's a way to get a feel for what, I know that's a goal, but is there a way to get a feel for if we're meeting that goal? Are we under those numbers or
You're talking about for
average class size? I'm
For average-
always
oh.
interested in average class size. What's our largest class size? I know
yes.
it's a struggle sometimes to
We can
maintain.
provide you with that data. We can provide you with the percent of classrooms that actually meet this staffing model and the ones that don't per grade level.
My last thing, Madam President, I promise. And one of this, I think I used to misunderstand also the KCPS tiered model for secondary and elementary, that red, yellow, and green pyramid. I am one that, and I think Board Member Evans' question made me think about this. I think oftentimes a mistake is made that we believe that academic intervention should only include and only needs to include professional development, things like the reading specialists, all those things. And I am so happy to continue to see more and more details there. But there are so many social and emotional reasons why our kids are not performing academically, that the interventions need to include those things, or these things that we do show will never even matter. So it would be nice as we see what our because this is the comprehensive approach to getting kids to perform academically, right? So what I'm seeing here is what are those social emotional. I know the district for a fact is making a number of attempts, and so I just don't see that layer in here. So that would be nice to see as a part of the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, because that increased resource in those are needed as well in those schools.
I think we can provide a side-by-side on that, but I do know that we did a board monitoring presentation on what we've done as far as social workers and increasing that number to where now they have a much last year they were probably 1 to 12 schools or something. This year it's 1 to 5 schools.
Each social worker last year was covering 10 schools, and now this year each social worker is only covering 4 schools.
So we just talk about it separate from academics, or we?
It's on the student support board update 1.3.
Yeah, and I guess in my mind, and it will always in my mind be a part of 1.1, always, because, yeah.
Absolutely. We can do a behavior and academic side by side. And most of the time, that's how a pyramid appears. You'll see the academic and the behavioral or social emotional on the same slide, because they do interchange. Kids do go back and forth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so just can I, can, Ms. Lewis? Okay, so on the scorecard under goal 2, where we talk about 2B, the percentage of students receiving effective social emotional behavior interventions. So are you saying that you want that to be somewhere else, or is it the same thing? I just want to make sure that we're clear with
What my request is?
and with the administration as to where they're supposed to report it and when
You know
they're
what?
supposed to
You know
report out
what?
based on
And I guess I was getting clarification on where we are reporting it, and I was also making a point that I was misreading that for so long, and I guess that was also for the benefit of the public, to know that this is not all that is done relative to academic improvement. And then so I think if anything, I was making more of a point, and if we're going to talk about it separately, that's fine. Or if I need to listen separately and put them together in my mind, that's fine. But it was really more of a point that it's so much more than that, and we're doing so. It requires so much more, and we're doing so much more.
Board Member Oates, were you going to tell us when that was up in our monitoring?
Yeah, I believe that's, I'm looking at Mike right now, but I believe that's a KPI under 1.3 as far as the social emotional, maybe. Hi. The discussion over social emotional supports, that's a KPI from the scorecard, that's a KPI under 1.3. Correct. I want to say so from when we went through the exercise. So it's in the presentation. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yes, Board Member Manser.
So caught up in my colleague Natalie Lewis's discussion that I think I may have lost my question, but I'm going to try to re-grapple it because I was so fascinated by what she was sharing with me. I think this is maybe more of there's a comment and a question here. This is the model that you brought to us and that we fully supported. If people are watching us, even in the audience, they might see that we are struggling with it. And so for me, I would like for the community to understand that it is a very deep intervention process, and it is very complex, even for those of us who are charged with understanding it and championing this work. And so I think then the question I have is, as families receive this material and as it becomes available on Tyler, I'm wondering about training that allows, or some kind of easy to digest educational component. Because if I think, my first reaction when I saw the charts and I'm seeing a whole bunch of red is I'm feeling a little bit of panic. And so I think if that, I just want to make sure, how we help families to understand, because I think it would be very easy for people to, jump ahead in their interpretation of what this is telling them, and then how you're available, how you're truly working with the students to provide assistance.
Yes, we can certainly do that. We can talk with principals about making sure that whatever that they're having at their schools, would it be festivals or fairs or whatever they're having, that we provide an informational session for parents so that they can understand how to read the reports, they can understand what iReady is, what it is that we're testing, and then how they can help their child at home. Additionally, Parent University, we can talk with Samara about perhaps giving us a session during Parent University so that we can teach parents how to use iReady, and we are more than happy to do that.
But let's be clear, from your assessment, this is a state of emergency based on these numbers. Like in terms of where we are and where the at the level of what kids are matriculating at and where we hope them to be.
Well, I wouldn't call it a state of emergency. What I would call it is an opportunity for us to make sure that we are able to provide them with what they need so that they can access. So if we do things right, what it does is it's given us enough tools in order for us to really do this right so that we can see students move out of it. I would rather know this information and make sure that we are able to react and respond to it, but I would not call it a state of emergency. I would say that we do have to be urgent about our work, and I think we talk about urgency all the time because kids only get every grade level one time, and so that's the reason why we've got so many supports in place so that we can make sure that one time they're there, that they maximize that, and that we're able to maximize that. But I would not call it a state of emergency, but I would say that we must be urgent about the work that we're doing in order to move our students.
That this opportunity is great. I mean, in terms of where we are trying to go, because I don't want to just underestimate our reality and how we're able to communicate how we're moving forward, obviously, but there's a lot of work to be done as it relates. And I am very glad that we have the level of intervention that we have and actually the report out dates, because that's something that is new, to say that this is when they're going to take these formative assessments, this is when we'll have access to it so we can see how they're moving across. But the question I had was around the scorecard in under the 3B, and then correlating that to slide, I think it's 11, where you extrapolate parts of the scorecard for reading. And I just wondered why that wasn't more explicit in the scorecard under 3B as relates to Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, +5, +8, -8. So in terms of us monitoring the scorecard, why aren't those actually on here as goals?
Because it's baseline. I mean, this is our first year utilizing this particular instrument.
Okay, but are these goals, this right here?
Those are
Yes.
our goals.
Yes, those are our goals. We're looking at moving 8% of the students from Tier 3 to Tier 2.
Right, I can understand that, but if these are our goals, I understand that this is a baseline year, but if these are actually goals, I'm trying to figure out why they're not on the scorecard, if they're real goals.
Well, the scorecard, I don't think we've updated the scorecard for this year. The scorecard last year, we set it as a baseline. This year, we will actually have, at the end of this year, we'll actually be able to show you how many kids that we moved from Tier 3 to Tier 2, Tier 2 to Tier 1. We expect growth in all of them. We would like to see growth in every single kid. It's just moving from one tier to the next, and I think Ms. Lewis articulated that pretty well. You can move within a tier, but not move to the next tier. So with these numbers, these are the numbers that should actually populate the scorecard for this year.
Right, so are you saying by May the 17th, given the assessment dates, that we should be reaching the +5, +8, -8?
Yes, by the time we
Okay.
get to the end of the school year, we expect to see those or better.
Ms. Robinson, one of the things that is taken into consideration when formulating our goals is actually having baseline data to formulate goals off of. So last year, we did not have access to any data like this. So, creating goals last year when we didn't actually understand what this data was going to indicate to us, we believe that to be irresponsible, to just pull a number out of a hat. So it was very important for us to really get a handle on our baseline information before we populated goals.
No, what makes this difficult when you think about the KPI is the truth is what should be populated in there is how we're moving from below basic to proficient to advanced with our assessment scores that we don't have right now. So we're having to try to supplement with our universal screener because we simply don't have data, which the baseline year would have been the data that we would have received from the state this year.
Okay, Ms. Wolfsey?
I'm going to circle right back and make it quick on the parent part, because I do think this is an opportunity for us as a district, almost as if parents are going to be brought into the professional learning community as an equal with their teacher about their child. I'm looking at mine, and I'm telling you, I'm having a hard time understanding it. So I do hope, I'm really encouraging you. I think that this is if we can explain this so parents can know how they can be a part of this, it will help us hold on to something that we, especially if you've got someone that needs, might even be a tier 2, knowing I have a plan and how to work that plan will be very important to parents. I do also think, I know your goal is 45 minutes a week in school, but there are those of us, students will get on because they want to get on, and that will also help make up some of that gap as well. So I can't encourage you guys enough to really work the parent end of this and make sure that they get pulled in as a part of the kind of solution.
Sure. We'll make sure that we do that.
Just one last thing. I'm sorry. So one of the things, just to piggyback off of what Board Member Wolfsey was saying, at my child's school, there's a lot of communication around attendance and 90/90, and a lot of just encouragement in that area, but we don't always know what the goals are as it relates to academics, and how do we ingrain that in the culture so that parents are engaged in a way, just as we're pushing, our kids to go to school every day, and we know that there's a, causal relationship. If they show up, then they're going to grow more, but to encourage parents to push them for being, not only present, but actually absorbing the information, and then also doing that at home, in the community, et cetera. So I think that would be another recommendation in terms of the school culture.
So providing more goals to parents so that parents can be aware of where we are and where we're trying to go. Is that
Right,
what I
and
hear?
in other schools, they have their actual goals that they have as it relates to where they want their kids to matriculate at. And so when you walk in the building, it's a big poster as it relates to what those academic goals are, just as we have for our attendance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sort of, and I think it's the providing the goals, and then here's what you can do to help support the goals. And it may also be co-creating the goals so that there is buy-in. But I think the bigger piece is then, and here's your role. Here's what will need to happen in order to help that child meet that goal.
Sure.
I did want to share with the board too that our goal is to make sure that there's a supplemental handout that will go with that parent report that will address a lot of some of the questions that you raised tonight.
Other questions? Oh, yes, Mr. Evans?
I don't have a question. Before you gavel us out, I just want to make a comment, which is unrelated to what's being presented. I just want to say that Dr. Bedell, Ms. Quinley and Jennifer, I wish you guys could have been at the MSBA conference to see them perform on Saturday. It was. I mean, it was great. I mean, I felt like I was in a college class. And Ms. Quinley, you crunched the numbers to let the people know across the state what they would be expected if they put charters in their districts. And Dr. Bedell, not one person got up and left the conference. I mean, doing your presentation. And my colleague sitting next to me, Board Member Woosley, she had people smiling and she had people laughing. I mean, just a great job. And I asked her for an autograph and she wouldn't give it to me. And I wanted to get Dr. Bedell's and Ms. Quinley's autograph, but they were inundated with people wanting more. And I could have stayed in that session all Saturday afternoon, because I'm telling you, and I'm not just saying that because they're sitting here, I'm saying it because I learned even more. And I thought I knew a little something about charter schools, but your team did a bang-up job. And Miss Robinson, your lady did a good job too. So congratulations to all three of you all.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. And we do want the community to know that we take what we're doing here seriously. We presented around the state on this topic. We'll be in Indianapolis presenting next Sunday, Ms. Wolfsey. We present next Sunday at the National Public Education Conference, and then the following week, we will be in Baltimore presenting at the Council for Great City Schools on that same presentation. And so we feel like we have a lot to share with people around the country regarding what we're dealing with. And what I love about it is it's the superintendent, it's a board member, it's a staff member. It shows how united we are and unified we are, and why it's critical that we have some stability here in the Kansas City Public School District.
And Mr. Oates presented too, and I didn't have an
Well,
opportunity
that's what,
to see
let me say that part. Okay. I do want to, no, thank you though for queuing that up, but Board Member Oates and also Board Member Manser went down, and we were recognized for our superintendent evaluation and the process that we've done to align it with our strategic plan. And Board Member, our Board Treasurer presented to all of the other board presidents around the state regarding the evaluation. So we do want to say kudos to him for a job well done, and for Ms. Okay, now for the business items for the next business meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The two items that we will ask the board to take action on, it's the transportation route approval and then the board of, is that it? Transportation route approval. I'm sorry, I thought I had two of them. So that's the one we'll ask the board to take action on in 2 weeks.
Thank you, and I recognize Board Member Wolfsey for announcement.
I'll round it out here. I want to remind everybody about our off-site meeting this coming quarter. Will be at East High School on November 14th, and I really want to make sure we get a lot of people there. We have completed the football field and track field there, so the athletic facilities are brand new. So if you have time and you're going to make it to that one, I'd suggest to come out a few minutes early so you can go take a look at those. They're really phenomenal. So hope to see you November 14th at East High School.
Thank you. If there's no other business to come before the body, the meeting is adjourned.